Well, it's safe to say I am back. Of course, I'm back. I'm sitting right here, back on the Thomas Take Sports podcast. And let's just say we got a lot to discuss. Let's just say that I have a lot of things to give you my take on in regards to the Buffalo Bills and everything that has taken place over the course of the last 2 weeks. Now, what put me in the state of mind to where I felt the need to say, you know what? I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to take a little break. What was it? What happened? What happened? What made me say, you know what, Rye, you're going to take a nice little break from the Thomas Take, come back with fire, fury, ammo, whatever you want to call it. What was it? What could it have been? Could it have been 13 seconds in the AFC divisional round? Could it have been the fact that not only did I sit and watch that game from start to finish, not only did I see Josh Allen play the greatest game of his 4-year career, not only did I see the Buffalo Bills come within 13 seconds of hosting an AFC title game for the first time since 1992, which happens to be the year that I was born and brought into this great world of Western New York football. No, it was the fact that not only did I watch it, not only did I digest it, not only did I have utter silence between these walls watching the game in this studio upstairs room here in the casa, but the simple fact that after this game ended, I took to social media just to see the reactions to this game, as I have after each win, after each loss. And I see a divide, frankly, in why this result presented itself, why and how this actually happened. And this happened, meaning this 13-second debacle at the end of this game, for a wide variety of reasons. But I could try to put on my Point Dexter cap each and every time I'm behind this microphone and try to educate people on football. I don't know everything about football. I like to put my opinions out there. I like to put my takes out there. And I like to hear your reactions to those takes, whether you agree with them or disagree with them. And also your alternative theories or thoughts towards the topics that I bring to the table. That's what the show is all about. But I think over the years, I've seen enough, I know enough to formulate an opinion, accumulate thought over the course of the last, week or so as to how and why the Buffalo Bills lost this game. And I think that the time in which I've spent meticulously preparing these thoughts over the course of the last week and a half was fully warranted, because I think if I went on right after that game was over and provided you my thoughts on this 13 seconds and everything like that, I don't think you would have got a clear, concise thought process, because I think to anyone that talked to me on the phone after that game was over, they would know simply that I was not in the right frame of mind. I could not put together a sentence. For lack of a better term, I was Sleepy Joe in terms of what I was bringing to the table with these takes. I was slow and couldn't put a sentence together and all that stuff. I could not put a sentence together after that game. And watching how it went down and knowing how it went down then and how I look at it now, my thought process hasn't really changed. But to see the divide as to how this game actually fell apart for the Buffalo Bills, I think is a little unfortunate, because I think the best way to address a problem is to actually address the problem, not duck, dodge, dip, dive, and dodge the problem, in the words of Patches O'Houlihan of dodgeball fame. Bills Mafia, I love this fan base to death. I love the fact that you guys tune into the show every single week, but I think we're getting this one wrong in terms of what actually happened on that field on that night in Arrowhead. And I think yesterday's loss of the Chiefs losing to the Cincinnati Bengals actually makes this loss for me harder to digest. The fact that the Chiefs lost to the Bengals in Arrowhead a week after the Chiefs narrowly got past the Buffalo Bills at Arrowhead, it makes this loss by the Buffalo Bills that much more painful for me. Not less painful, more painful. Because X's and O's wise, player for player wise, however you want to look at it, I think the Buffalo Bills are a much better team than the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, we have no way to prove that because we didn't play the Bengals this year. We have no way to prove that because we won't be playing the Bengals this year. The Bengals went to the Super Bowl. The Buffalo Bills didn't. So somewhere along the way, the Bengals were better. And I'll tell you why the Bengals were better than the Buffalo Bills momentarily. But going back to the 13 seconds and how this game ended the way that it did, what does 13 seconds represent to me? What does 13 seconds mean to Ryan Thomas? In the 29 years of being a fan of the Buffalo Bills, almost 30 years since birth, being a fan of this team, I have seen so many painful defeats over the course of my fanhood. Most of which games that were seen by my father's generation or my grandfather's generation as meaningless in comparison to the 4 straight Super Bowl losses, they still hurt. Okay, they still hurt. Those losses, you could say J.P. Lossman fumbling the ball, Sean Ellis running it down the sideline to put the Bills out of playoff contention. That loss for me still rings true and loud in comparison in my generation to the previous generation, even a Super Bowl, because my generation didn't get to witness the culmination of those 4 straight Super Bowls. What made the Bills a powerhouse of the AFC? I didn't get to see that, so I didn't get to see that. Not only did I not get to see that, I didn't get to see the Super Bowls. I was 2 years old when the Buffalo Bills went to their 4th straight Super Bowl. So my fanhood, 17 years out of 29. Or we could say 17 years out of 22, 23 years, 25 years. The Buffalo Bills didn't make the playoffs. So I didn't really have a high in my fandom up until recent years with Josh Allen. But I will say here on the show that what 13 seconds represents to me in terms of this loss, this 36-33, 42-36 loss, however you want to look at it, how does 36-33 and tying it 36-36 and winning it 42-36, what does 13 seconds represent to me? 13 seconds represents to me the toughest loss that I've ever witnessed as a Buffalo Bills fan to date. Now, I do remember the Music City Miracle. I was a youngster for that one, too. I was 7 years old, but I remember where I was, who I was watching that game with, their reactions as well as mine, and I will say the same thing for this one. 13 seconds. I'm watching this game by myself, actually. It was snowy. It was wet. It was cold. And I didn't feel like going anywhere to watch it. I wanted to listen to the soothing sounds of Jim Nantz and Tony Romo and really just dive into this game. Really listen and watch it. And it was the toughest loss I've ever witnessed as a Bills fan. Easily. But what it represents to me is not only is it the toughest loss, but it is the first moment of McDermott failure. True McDermott failure. And I hate to say that because I think Sean McDermott is why this team is where it is today. But this represents the first moment of McDermott failure in terms of coaching, game management, clock management, however you want to look at it. Because this 13 seconds, you have the 36-33 lead. Your team went out there, they get the points necessary to put you ahead. And Kansas City's got 13 seconds to move the football 45 yards. Moment of that kickoff where Tyler Bass kicked that ball into the air and it traveled to the end zone. That's when I knew that this game was not over. Far from it. Actually, that to me gave the Kansas City Chiefs a lease on life that they didn't deserve. And they take the field, they run out there, 13 seconds left, 3 timeouts, and the defense is playing off. The defense is not playing physical. They are not aggressive. They are allowing the receiver to catch the football and maybe get a couple more yards than what they needed. But in moments like these, for a head coach, where you have a small lead and a small amount of time, that coach has to make the right call. If that coach is hesitant slightly in the call of how you approach, how you defend a quarterback like Pat Mahomes, a receiver like Tyreek Hill, a receiver, once again, like Travis Kelce, because, yes, he is the best tight end in the league, and he is an extra receiver out on that field. If you think slightly wrong in that facet of a game, at that tail end moment, that failure is solely on your shoulders as the head coach of a football team. And I think, as I said earlier, I could put on my Point Dexter hat and try to be John Madden, Tony Romo, John Gruden in his commentary days. I could try to be one of those guys. I'm not. I could try to be for you, but I won't do that. What I will say, in terms of something that every single football fan would agree with, is the simple fact that no matter how we look at the sport of football, offense, defense, special teams, 3 phases of the game, no matter how you look at the sport of football, no matter how you want to say this player is the GOAT or this player is not the GOAT or whatever football conversation you want to have, you can have it. But it starts and it ends with the simple fact that since this game was invented, since this game was created, since this game was revolutionized over the course of the last 100 years, a game is won or lost on the sidelines. A game is won or lost on the sidelines with the coach that is coaching that team. Coaching wins and coaching loses games. It's that simple. I think that we could go across the entire history of the National Football League and look at some of the best teams ever and say, why were that team, or why was that team specifically the best team ever? You'd say the Patriots with Bill Belichick. You'd say the San Francisco 49ers with Bill Walsh. You'd say Chuck Knowles, Pittsburgh Steelers, steel curtain defense. You'd say Don Shula's Colts. They were pretty good. But you would say Don Shula's Dolphins. You would say Vince Lombardi's Packers. You would say Tom Landry's Cowboys. All these teams, legendary teams that paved the way for what the NFL is today. They were all coached well in the biggest moments within that era of coaching. Sean McDermott failed this task. He failed the task of going head-to-head, smarts for smarts with Andy Reid. And for me, Ryan Thomas, you guys have watched this show. The guys that have watched this show since it started, you guys know how closely hand-in-hand I am with Sean McDermott in terms of supporting him. But I cannot do this show without calling a spade and simply saying that Sean McDermott's first moment of pure failure was this game between the Bills and Chiefs, divisional round 2022. We worked the whole offseason to preparing and perfecting this roster towards beating the Kansas City Chiefs, because that was the team that we couldn't get past the year prior in the AFC title game. We add a Gregory Rousseau. We add a Boogie Basham. All season long, I'm wondering where those guys are. You know, Rousseau had 50 tackles, 4 sacks. Boogie Basham in and out of the lineup I can't provide you guys with the right answer to that question as to why Boogie Basham was in and out of the lineup. But what I can provide you is the fact that wasn't enough. Whatever Brandon Beane wanted to do with this roster to try to prepare it to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, that wasn't going to get it done. What was going to get it done was being physical with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I can point to history last night, yesterday, as soon as yesterday, and say that the Cincinnati Bengals just watched the game, taped it, watched it, the Bengals and Chiefs. The way the Bengals played the Chiefs, and I'm talking Bengals defense versus Chiefs offense, polar opposite to how Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier game planned their number one total ranked defense towards the Kansas City Chiefs. And I tell you this, if I say that, which I just did, if I'm saying that out loud again, the number one ranked defense, total defense, if they couldn't prepare that unit as well as the Bengals prepared their unit, that is a coaching flaw. If that defense couldn't get up for that offense in terms of pressuring, in terms of being physical, in terms of making it nasty, and yes, one of my main keys to victory that the Bengals did so well yesterday was forcing Mahomes to throw from within the pocket. I talked about it all week long. Force Mahomes to throw from within the pocket. If Mahomes is out of the pocket, he is more dangerous. More dangerous, not less dangerous. And they didn't do that all day long, 13 seconds or not. This game was won and lost with the defensive coaching strategy of one Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier. And we move on from this game because simply we have to. We have to move on from what 13 seconds represents. We have to use it as motivation towards next year, because if you don't do that, you're just beating yourself. Thank the good Lord, the football gods answered back and said Pat Mahomes is going to throw an interception in overtime at 13 seconds into overtime against the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think they have their fate. I will talk about that in my Super Bowl preview show and how I see their fate ending in the Super Bowl and how I see that shaken down, giving you guys my preview of that game as I always do every year. But McDermott's first true moment of failure as a coach of the Buffalo Bills was Bills Chiefs 2022 AFC divisional round. And now we move forward because we have to, and the Bills have already been asked to move forward because a key member of their coaching staff is gone. Brian Daboll is gone. The Brian Daboll era, summing that up, yeah, I was Daboll's probably, I would say, I would put this on my shoulders, firmly on my shoulders, of all the podcasters, of all the sports shows out there, whether they're beat writers or podcasters, journalists, you name it, I can say right here that I probably was Brian Daboll's harshest critic. That I was probably one of the first people to go out there on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and say that I wanted him gone during Allen's developmental years as a quarterback. I thought he actually stunted Allen's growth in certain facets. And you would go back to those shows, you go back to those games and understand that when the Bills didn't have Stephon Diggs yet, Brian Daboll seemingly didn't trust Josh Allen to put as many pass attempts on that rocket arm as what we saw year one of Diggs and year two of Diggs on the team. Brian Daboll was very gun shy with the development of Josh Allen initially. And Brian Daboll has made so many play calls over the course of his time as the offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills that leave me scratching my head, that leave me saying those calls to why the Bills lost these games, namely the Jacksonville Jaguars game this year, 6-9. And I will go back to this fact because every game matters. Every game matters. Each week matters just as much as the last. People say, oh, the season starts in November. The tough football. It always starts in November. Rawr. Yeah, that's a great soundbite. And yeah, I do love November and December football. I do love the gritty, dirty time of year that November and December represent to the game of football. These games are won and lost in the trenches. You got hard runners. You got Derrick Henry. You got, truly physical specimens across the sport, the likes of which we haven't seen. Guys like Travis Kelce that move like a wideout but are built like a linebacker. I mean, guys that have basketball backgrounds that they were able to kind of transition into football. DK Metcalf. I mean, that guy flat out he doesn't even make sense as a human being. He does not make sense. And I say that as a compliment. 6'5", 235 pounds, and runs a 4.340 on a slow day. That doesn't make sense. But back to Dable. One facet of the whole Dable-Frazier thing that really agitated me, and I didn't say it on any show, and I wish I would have, but I thought maybe I'm grasping at straws with this one. But one facet of the NFL, frankly, and it never mattered to me in this sense because it never affected my team. It never affected the Buffalo Bills. But the simple fact that offensive coordinators of successful teams, defensive coordinators of successful teams, any coach of any successful team under any position have the opportunity to interview for a head coaching job with these piss-poor teams that find themselves where they are for their own reasons. They put themselves there. The Chicago Bears, they put themselves there. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they put themselves there. Why should those teams have an opportunity to interview an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator, or any successful coach within a staff of a successful team that season? It should simply be, if Dable wants a head coaching job, if Dable wants to interview for a head coaching job, that's fine. Leave it to the end of the year. Let these coaches coach the situation that they've earned. Dable and Frazier were a part of the staff for multiple years. They worked their way up to this point. And what a huge distraction, whether it's a 30-minute Zoom call or not. It's a distraction to the team and to the coach. Leslie Frazier said it best. I can't do two things at once. I'm going to help prepare this defense as best as I possibly can for this game. And then we'll talk with these teams. Then we'll interview with these teams. Brian Dable, though, was working his way towards a head coaching job. It was his main purpose in being an offensive coordinator and developing the way he did here the last 4 or 5 years. 4 years, I believe. But my thing is, I think Sean McDermott looked at what was best for the team, as he should, but in terms of peak performance, bringing Dable back last year, being that Dable was weighing some of these head coaching offers, let's just say I'm the head coach. Hypothetically, I'm the head coach of the Bills. I frankly would have said, Brian, you're interviewing for these head coaching jobs. Clearly the writing's on the wall, and as far as your intentions on where you want to be, we fully respect that. There's only 31 other head coaching jobs in this league. You're certainly not taking mine. I'm here for the long haul. I just signed a 6-year, 7-year deal. Let's just say I'm Sean McDermott. 8-year deal. I'm not going anywhere. But if you really want to be a head coach and you feel like that's where you want to be, then you can go. And McDermott would have then let go of Dable, and we wouldn't have had Dable this year. And I think that distraction would have been avoided because it was a distraction. I mean, I heard every single interview leading up towards the tail end of the season, such and such ask, what do you think, Josh Allen, if Brian Daboll leaves? What do you think, Josh Allen, if Brian Daboll leaves? That's annoying. And that's something that I'm sure Josh Allen answered it as best as he could the million times he was asked that question. He had to answer it the same plain Jane Wonder Bread way. And I give him a lot of credit for that. I think that Brian Daboll being gone for a lot of reasons is actually a great thing for this team. I think it allows a different opportunity for Allen to run the offense in a different way. It allows the new coach, whoever that may be, to come in and provide his own style to the offense that I think desperately needs a brush up. And people can roll their eyes and say, wow, you think their offense needs work. I don't think their offense needs work in terms of the talent they have. I think any offensive coordinator would have had success the last 2 years, or should have had success within the last 2 years with the talent that we have, right? But what I'm saying is the style was so unbalanced over the course of Daboll's time here that if you can bring in an offensive coordinator that can preach that sort of balance of having a pass and run game within an NFL offense, you need that in order to win games in this league consistently, truly win games on a consistent basis, not playing down to the level of your opponent, which is what Buffalo did this year, better than just about anybody. That's one thing they did just about as well as anybody. They played down to the level of their opponent. I can go to 3 losses this year that were very frustrating, that should not have been losses, that if those losses went the other way, we're not going to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. We're hosting the Chiefs. We're saying, come to our house. Bring it. Let's go. We got 75,000 strong. This ain't Arrowhead, but it's Orchard Park, New York. Let's go, baby. Bring it. And instead, we're losing week 1 in a home opener to the Pittsburgh Steelers off of a block punt. We're losing in Jacksonville to the Urban Meyer-led Jacksonville Jaguars. And we're losing to Tennessee. We're losing after a terrible first half against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And those are just a few games that pop into my head, right? But I think that the Brian Daboll era, there was success. I understand people not wanting to give pushback on Daboll and not wanting to, call a spade as much as I do. But I will do that. I have to do that because, frankly, I feel like Daboll should have had the success that he had, if not more success than what he actually had. I feel so highly about these players on this offense that I think he should have done better. I'm sorry. That's just how I feel. And God bless him, because this guy is undertaking a disaster of a situation with the New York Giants. I give him a lot of credit for having the cojones to leave Buffalo and Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and Dawson Knox and Gabriel Davis to go to the Giants with Daniel Jones, Kenny Galladay, Evan Ingram, and Saquon Barkley. And those names, when I name them out like that, people can say, oh, wow, they have quite a bit. Saquon's an all-pro runner. Evan Ingram, when healthy, he's a pretty solid tight end. Kenny Galladay, when he had Matt Stafford throwing him the ball, at least in Detroit, was a pretty good wide receiver. They paid him as such. But Danny Dimes to Josh Allen to Daniel Jones, you see a skill set there with Daniel Jones that I guess is Josh Allen light in terms of his mobility, but I don't know if Daniel Jones can really go above his own level. I think Daniel Jones has his level. He hasn't even come close to reaching it yet, but once he does, I don't know what is beyond that level. That doesn't mean that Daniel Jones is a bad quarterback. It means that Daniel Jones has a level to reach, and that's really it. That level is maxed out. Josh Allen's ceiling is non-existent. It doesn't exist. There is no ceiling. The sky's the limit. So, there are only 31 other jobs in the league as a head coach. And for Brian Daboll, you have to take a stab at it. And this was the best opportunity that he saw. And he took it. He saw that as the best opportunity for him and his family. Credit to him. But I actually think there were better opportunities out there. I don't know if this was the best one. And frankly, this is a media market that I would avoid like the plague. I mean, 3 years from now, guys like Michael K. on Yes, guys like Adam Shine, those are guys that are great at what they do. But they will bury you where you stand if you are not a good head coach in that market. These guys like the Ben McAdoo's, the Joe Judges, if you make one piss-poor decision in Buffalo as the OC, you can get away with it for a little while. But if you make one piss-poor decision as the head coach of the New York Football Giants, one of the most regal franchises in all of football, and all of sport, frankly, your ass is grass. I don't see this lasting long. I see Daboll, potentially, you could say I see Daboll as the Josh McDaniels of Sean McDermott's career. And what I mean by that is Josh McDaniels got a head coaching job with the Denver Broncos. It didn't last long. He went right back to New England, picked up where he left off with TB12. Could Brian Daboll follow suit? Could Brian Daboll end up getting canned from the Giants if they don't have the success? 3 years is all you got. That's all you got nowadays. If there is not wins and loss record progression as an NFL head coach after 3 seasons, your ass is grass. Maybe we'll see Daboll come back in a couple years. Don't be shocked. I know I won't be. So the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator search begins, and that is what we want to talk about, right? That's what I'm here to talk about. That's what you guys are here to tune into. And I definitely want to say that there are a lot of guys on this list in my head, in my mind, that I really like for this position. And the one that jumps out at me, the one that I've heard a lot about, whether the rumors are true, the rumor mill is the rumor mill. It'll always swirl. It'll always keep going. But the guy that I think provides Buffalo with the best opportunity to have a raised level of results compared to what we've seen. That's what we want to see. We want to see improvement on both sides of the ball. We want to see us be better because, frankly, we're not good enough to make it to the Super Bowl yet. Clearly, we didn't do it. Who is a coach that could come in as an OC and I think provide even better results than Daboll? And the guy that jumps out to me right now is the leading candidate for this position is a former head coach in this league. And not only a former head coach, but a former Super Bowl winning head coach at that. And the leading candidate to me is Doug Peterson. And I'll tell you why. Not only is he a former Super Bowl winning head coach, but he has maximized the talent without having much talent. I'm talking winning a Super Bowl with Nick Foles as his quarterback. That's first and foremost. But catering an offense around a quarterback that didn't have an offensive line, and a quarterback at that not only didn't have an offensive line, but a quarterback that is very injury prone in Carson Wentz, leading those Eagles to what would have been probably a most valuable player season for Carson Wentz at that point. And Doug Peterson, as well as a guy that I do think wants to be a head coach again. And Brian Daboll proved that, hey, this is a spot where if you are successful enough, you will get a head coaching spot. You will get a chance. And Doug Peterson played in this league for a long time. He went from Miami to Carolina. He was in NFL Europe for a little while. Back up to Brett Favre in Green Bay. Back up in Philly. Back up in Cleveland. Then he went back to Green Bay. And worked his way up the ladder without a doubt as a coach in this league, as a quarterback's coach for the Eagles, as an offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, and obviously as a head coach for the Eagles and winning that Super Bowl there. And I think that his record as a head coach, 42-37-1, is one thing, but his record in the postseason, 4-2. Frankly, this guy should be in line for a head coaching offer. When he was fired by the Eagles, I thought, really? Nick Sirianni over Doug Peterson? I don't know about that. We'll see. and the jury's still out on that. But I think if Doug Peterson wants to really make a stamp back in this league as far as what his offense brings, I think this is his best way to do it. And I think certainly there are many teams that are interested in him, whether it's the Bears, the Vikings, the Broncos. I haven't heard that he is under serious consideration for the head coaching jobs of those teams. I've heard that he's interviewed with those teams, but I haven't heard that he is like a main candidate on their list. But as far as a team that is looking for an offensive-minded coach for their staff, Doug Peterson is it. And I think that given how RPO dependent his offenses are, Josh Allen could develop very, very, very well as a signal caller, as a true signal caller. When you bring in a guy like Doug Peterson, he might not be here for the long haul. He might be here for only a season, and then he might be out one and done as an OC. So you might end up having, the same problem that you have now. You don't have an offensive coordinator in a year. Yeah, that's not great, but it's great if Doug Peterson is able to help Josh Allen in facets of his game that he has not had that help in. Dable and Dorsey, I'll talk about Ken Dorsey in a sec, they did a phenomenal job in terms of bringing Josh Allen along in that offense that he's currently running. But Doug Peterson could help Josh Allen, I think, to the point where the offensive coordinator won't necessarily matter as much in terms of who is next beyond a Doug Peterson. And that's something that I think is a facet of Josh Allen's game that he could turn up to 100 and see him as a signal caller in a much better way. So that's something that I think is real. I also want to throw out names like Joe Brady, offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers for a few years. Obviously, Sean McDermott likes to bring in similar assistants to who assistants that he knows and that he's worked with before, whether they're on offense or defense. We've seen that a lot with players. We've seen it with coaches that are on the staff. Brandon Beane, the GM on the staff, obviously, that was a McDermott brought over addition, which I always like to bring that up, that McDermott brought the GM over. The GM didn't bring the coach over. The coach came first, and the GM came second. But Pep Hamilton, that's another name. He is a very brilliant coach as far as what he brings to an offense, a lot of different wrinkles and stuff like that, which I think Buffalo Bills fans really want to see added to this offense. There was a little bit of trickery within the offense, but it wasn't really as innovative as it could be with a guy like Pep Hamilton. So throwing that out there as well. What do I want to see for this Bills team this offseason? That's a question that I think I'd like to answer. I've seen a lot of Bills fans talk about speed. I've seen a lot of Bills fans talk about we're right there. We just got to get through Kansas City. Look, that is that. What happened is what happened. Every year is a new year. Each team is going to get a little bit better or a little bit worse. And Buffalo is hoping to stay in the little bit better, equation. How do they get there? How do they get a little bit better? I think depth is huge, and depth is really important on defense. These teams that we're seeing in the NFC Championship last night, the 49ers, the Rams, they have adequate depth on their defense. Their offenses are what they are. That's the identity of their team as far as the Rams go, for sure. I think you'd say the same for the San Francisco 49ers. I don't think there is a better wide receiver tight end group pair in the league than Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. And I say that because Jimmy Garoppolo is not that good of a quarterback, and those guys are still very productive. Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, they're productive. They're great, but they're getting balls thrown to them by Pat Mahomes. These guys are getting passes thrown to them by Jimmy G. So I think defense is a huge priority for me this offseason. I want to see more depth. I want to see speed. I want to see physicality. And I think one of the biggest questions facing this roster right now is whether or not Tremaine Edmonds returns. I think his game tape this year was staggering in terms of how bad it was. And being a middle linebacker in this league on that type of defense, a 4-2-5 defense where you got, four line or how did I say that? 4-2-5, 5 DBs, 2 linebackers, and 4 down linemen. those two linebackers, one of them being Edmonds, the other being Matt Milano, Edmonds is under that much more pressure to make his impact, and I don't think he has done that in the way that I would hope. I know he's young. I hear that all the time. I've said it myself. But he was just not good this year. I think he regressed. And another question is, will Leslie Frazier be back? And listen, I think Leslie Frazier did a good job during the season with the defense. They were the number one total ranked defense for a reason. But that loss, that 13 seconds, is solely on Sean McDermott's shoulders and partially on the shoulders of Leslie Frazier as well. And I think that has to be answered for. Over the course of this offseason, I would urge any media member that is at those press conferences to figure out why the heck did they play off? Why did they give Tyreek Hill so much space? Why did they give Travis Kelce so much space in single coverage, mind you? Why were the matchups not there? When, yes, this is the Chiefs. They are a really good team, but you've prepared for this team 3 times. It was the third time over the course of a year. AFC title game, week 5 this year, and AFC divisional round. This is a team that you should know front to back in terms of how you will prepare your team for them. Will how you prepare your defense work every time? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what doesn't work and has never worked against a team like KC is playing off. You have to you have to be aggressive. You have to be physical. And Cincinnati was yesterday, I should say. So there you have it. That is summing up 13 seconds. I don't think there will ever be a moment where I will willingly talk about this again or dedicate a show to the 13 seconds again. I will touch on it throughout the years. But other than that, I'm good. I can't stomach watching that game again. It was very frustrating because I think it was the greatest game that Josh Allen has ever played in. And it might not be the greatest game statistically, even though it was a great game for Allen statistically. It might not be his greatest, best statistical game ever. It's probably pretty damn close, though. And I say it's his greatest because it showed that this guy does belong in the conversation as one of the elite quarterbacks in this league and does belong in the conversation as the guy that the Buffalo Bills went out and traded up for. I mean, you trade up for a guy out of Wyoming that played essentially a year and a half in meaningful college football games at Wyoming. So how meaningful were they in comparison to the likes of UCLA and USC and Louisville and some of these other teams, some of these other programs, I should say. But boy, that guy gives you a chance to win every single year, every single week. So as long as they have Josh Allen and as long as they continue to build around him, the Buffalo Bills are going to be contenders, I should say, for a long time. But the window is only open for so long. I think you have Diggs on this team. Obviously, he's going to be here for a little while, but I say the window is only open for so long when I go to the other side of the ball, where you're not going to have Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer forever. You're not going to have, some of the veteran depth pieces, maybe even as soon as this year, this next season, with Jerry Hughes maybe leaving and Starla Tuile and some of those other guys being gone. So each year's different, and you might have some years where the Buffalo Bills only have Josh Allen, and that's it. And I hope once we get to that point, because we will get to that point, I hope once we do, we have a Super Bowl to show for it. I would hate for us to miss out on a Super Bowl and then go into that period where all we got is a quarterback. We have nothing else. Where for years and years and years during my fanhood of being a fan of the Buffalo Bills, we had everything and nothing because we didn't have a quarterback. So I hope they continue to build around this kid. I hope his progression continues to grow. And obviously, I think T. Martin was a name that was thrown out there as someone that interviewed. He's one of the Brady Six. He was drafted before Tom Brady, Tennessee quarterback, shortly after Peyton Manning left the university, and had a lot of collegiate success. Unfortunately, he didn't have a lot of NFL success, but he's been in the coaching ranks for a long time, collegiately as well as in the pros. Wide receivers coach for the Baltimore Ravens. And a lot of people within the league believe that he is worthy of an offensive coordinator shot. This offensive coordinator search is going to be very interesting, and it is the biggest storyline right now surrounding this team because obviously drastically impacts Josh Allen as far as who they pick. And I think Josh Allen will have a say in that as well. I know that because McDermott said so. So Ken Dorsey, I'd like to have him, but it looks like Brian Daboll might be bringing him along to the Giants. We'll see. But no matter what, I'll be right here with any information that I have, reacting to any information that is recently released. I'm Ryan Thomas. It was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Take care.